right. Good afternoon. It's 1:01. We'll go ahead and get started. This is the February 7th, 2023 meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission. I'll call this meeting to order. Let's start with introductions of the commissioners. Erin, do you want to start?
Yes. Hi, I'm Erin Hummel. I'm a landscape architect, and I was nominated by the American Society of Landscape Architects.
Hello, I'm Gary Petrie. I'm an architect, and I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
Hello, I'm Julie Johnson. I'm a historic preservation project manager, and I was nominated by the community at large.
I'm Kelly Wemple. I'm an architect, and I was nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
Hi, I'm George Dennis, retired law enforcement, and I live at a Landmark.
I'm Larry Sykes. I am an architect, and I was nominated by History Colorado.
I'm Ann Wattenberg. I'm an architect nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
Jen, do you want to
Oh, yeah. I'm Jen Capetto. I manage the Landmark Preservation team.
All right. So we have two meeting records on the agenda for approval, January 10th and January 24th. Someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the meeting records for approval as presented for January 10th and January 24th.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Do we have a second? Gary? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right, motion passes unanimously and the meeting records are approved. All right, at the beginning of every Landmark Preservation Commission meeting, we like to reserve some time for public comments. Oh, before I go to that. That's right. For those of you attending us virtually, which is anyone attending this meeting right now, please go ahead and view the tips we have on the screen. I know it can be hard to hear us sometimes. Our speaker is up at the front, and so commissioners, that's a reminder, we all need to project. We're very notoriously not very good at that, so we'll try and project. But if you do go into your audio settings, there's an additional menu where you can select to add background noise suppression, and we do recommend that. It kind of gets rid of any like paper muffling noises and things like that. If you're going to be providing a public comment or presenting, when it's your turn to speak, you can go ahead and unmute and then click on the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen to do that. So there are some additional menus you can see for troubleshooting, and reach out to Landmark staff if you have any additional issues. All right, so public comment period. This is for general preservation matters, not for anything that's on our design review agenda today. So is there anyone on the line who would like to provide a public comment? If so, please use the hand raise button at this time. If you're joining us via Zoom, if you're joining us on a phone, please dial *9, and that will go ahead and raise your hand. Do we have anyone joining by phone?
It doesn't look like it. Okay.
Then I won't keep repeating that.
I'll let you know if that changes. So no one's raised their hand.
All right. There are no public comments.
Sorry. Let's do too fast.
No problem. Then we'll move on to the consent agenda. So there was one project on consent today. Did have any issues with that project? If not, would someone like to make a motion? Great.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda, which consists of application number 2023-TAXC-001 at 1321 Ray Street.
I'll second. Thanks, Erin, for seconding and for the motion. For the vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right, motion passes. So if you're on the line for the consent agenda project, your project has been approved, and we'll go ahead and move forward with the rest of the meeting. So next up, we don't have any hearings today, so we're going to move right into design review projects. Up on the screen, you'll see our process. I'll go ahead and announce the item on the agenda, and staff will then introduce the project and their recommendation. upon which we'll hear from the applicant, and the applicant will have up to 10 minutes to present using as much or as little of that time as he needs. Then we'll open it up for public comments. So public comment periods are 2 minutes per person, and it'll be the same process we just went over, just use the hand raise button at that time. Once we've heard from all commenters, the commission will move into deliberation and vote. So the first project on review today is 2023-LM Demo-026 at 3515, 3519 Alcott.
Okay, good afternoon. So this is an application for demolition of a primary structure. You have already approved the map forming context for this, and the design detail for this is coming up next on the agenda. So this is just a review for the demolition. So this is what is existing on the lot currently. According to assessor records, this house was constructed in 1953. The Potter Highlands Historic District was designated in 1987. The original designation ordinance did not include a period of significance, but the ordinance was updated in 2007 to establish a period of significance as prior to and including 1943. The ordinance and designation application do not have a list of contributing and non-contributing structures. So based on the landmark ordinance, when determining whether or not a structure is contributing or non-contributing, the commission is directed to look at whether or not contributing or non-contributing structures are called out in the designation of ordinance, whether or not the structure was constructed within a period of significance, and whether it contributes significantly to the district. So in this case, this is a simple concrete block structure constructed in 1953, so it's outside the period of significance. It's not called out anywhere as being contributing, and staff finds that it does not significantly contribute to the character of the district. So staff is recommending that the commission determine this as non-contributing and then conditionally approve the demolition application based on the condition that a replacement plan be approved prior to the demolition.
Are there any questions for staff? Just reviewing the demolition. All right, is the applicant present? Could we promote them?
You should be able to turn the camera on. All right. You're welcome to, yep, you've unmuted. You're welcome to turn your camera on if you'd like as well.
Yeah, and please start with your name and address for the record. You have up to 10 minutes.
Hi, my name is Michael Wykov. I'm the designer of the project on 3519, 3515 Alcott Street. Complex structure that is up for review today. As far as the design goes, we wanted to stick with generally surrounding the areas, to stick with more of the reddish tone without going too red, kind of modernize the colors. I can kind of hear myself, so sorry.
Sorry, we're just reviewing the demolition at this time. Do you have anything about the demolition you'd like to?
Yeah, the only thing I would say about the demolition is that this house that is currently there, the one story, doesn't conform to anything in the surrounding area. And so, yeah, that's the only thing I would say towards that.
Great. Thank you. Sorry to stop you there. You'll have a separate time for the design, so I didn't want to get too far into that. Great. Questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you for your time. If there's anyone on the line who would like to provide a public comment on the demolition of this structure, please use the hand raise button at this time.
No hands raised. Okay. So stop sharing.
All right. Great. Then let's move into deliberation. So heard from staff and the applicant, fairly straightforward. Any thoughts on this?
Madam Chair, I think
That was an easy, easy determination. It was not contributing to what Potter Highlands was designated for.
Can I just ask why it has two addresses? 15 and 19, is it on board?
Yeah.
You know, the duplex?
Duplex, yeah.
So the replacement will be.
Oh, yeah. So the current house has one address, but the replacement, yeah.
Okay.
So
So,
the lot's been re-addressed.
okay, so, so,
No, that's a good question. All right, well, if we're all in agreement, then, we would like to make a motion. Right?
I move to find, Madam Chair, I move to find the building at 3515, 3519 Alcott Street as not-contributing to the Potter Highlands Historic District and approve application 2023-LM EEMO-026 for demolition with the condition that the replacement plan be approved by the Denver Landmark Preservation prior to the issuance of the approval as per design guideline 2.55, section 30-11, Denver Revised Municipal Code, presented testimony, submitted documentation, information provided in the staff report.
Great. Thanks, George. Do we have a
I'll
second?
second.
Thank you, Larry. All right, then I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right, motion passes unanimously. So our project is conditionally approved, and our next project up for design review is at the same address. It'll be the replacement. So do you want, yeah,
Grant introduction.
yeah, we'll wait 1 second. No problem.
I have to learn not to drive through Ryan.
All right, so we have one more commissioner joining us. Graham, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Graham Johnson, project manager and nominated by the Denver Planning Board. And apologize for being.
So Graham, we're just getting up to the second design review project. So 2023-COA-08 at 3515, 3519.
Okay, so this is an application for design details. So here you see the proposed infill, which is a duplex structure. The proposed infill design references the two-story boxy flat roof Italianate terrace type buildings that are found within the district. Character defining features of the terrace type include brick construction, flat roofs, boxy rectangular plans, simple forms, porches with low pitched roofs and simple columns, simple corbelled cornice details, multiple front doors which face the street, sash windows with simple headers and sills, and simple brick detailing such as spring courses. So here you can see detailing, they're planning to detail the front of the building in brick. They're also calling out there in the spandrel between the first and second floor to do a different color of brick with a herringbone pattern in order to kind of get a little trim distinction there to the facade.
Okay, for your remote control.
Okay.
Is that working? There you go.
Oh, wait, all right. No, wait. Okay. So here you have the facade of the building. So you see that there's a simple porch that extends across both entrances there. Really simple detailing at the cornice and the brick pattern between the first and second floor windows. Then you see on the sides, the brick wraps 12 feet back on the first floor, but less on the second floor there. You see, so the transition, they're using a vertical metal panel there that they're transitioning to on the upper floor. And then the rear of the building is going to be done in stucco. And I think I said that wrong. It's the upper story is 12 feet back, but then it transitions. So they're also proposing to use that same vertical metal panel as the cladding for the upper portion of the porch post as well. So the base of the porch posts are proposed to be clad in brick, and the upper portion is proposed to be clad in a vertical metal siding. There is also a flat roof garage there to the rear, which you can see here. Simple garage, flat roof form, which does fit district patterns, and that it is proposed to be clad in stucco to match the rear of the duplex. So here you see the rear. So you can see patio doors to the rear, upper story, balconies there, but rear, no one's going to see that part. And then the other side of the building, which is the same, so mirrored on the north and south elevation. So overall, staff finds this to be a successful infill design. It's simple, but kind of is a simplified version of the terrace type. However, we do have a few concerns with some of the materials. So here you see on the left, the various material specifications that were provided, kind of a close-up drawing there. On the right, staff does have concerns with the metal paneling that is proposed. There's not a lot of information provided on the metal paneling. All you see there is that note that says it will be a metal panel with vertical seams, but no information has been provided on the manufacturer dimensions of finish. But kind of regardless of that, still staff does not find any really vertical paneling to be compatible in this location where it's going to be visible. Guideline 4.7.D states that architectural metals should be limited to areas that are not readily visible when used in a residential context. So we don't typically see architectural metals as a feature in Potter Highlands, so staff does not find that their use is appropriate in these really visible locations. But yeah, and typically we don't see any kind of cladding on porch posts. Or typically, historically, the porch posts would be wood. Often in infill buildings, we would also allow that those be steel beams, so they could do a metal channel there if they wanted to do a modern touch, but we don't find that to be vertical metal cladding to be an appropriate material. Then we also have concerns about the stucco that is proposed. So the application just states that it will be a 2-coat stucco, but doesn't provide any other details or manufacturer information. So we don't know if the makeup or the depth. Guideline 4.7.C does require that stucco be cementitious stucco and at least 7/8 thick. So typically this would be a 3-coat stucco. So more information is needed on the stucco, and we need to make sure it's thick enough and it is a cement-based stucco. Then we do also have some concerns with the windows at the stucco. So guideline 4.8.F states that windows should be inset into the wall plane at least 2 inches. But looking at their window details, it looks like the windows are inset at the brick, but it looks like the windows are not being inset at the stucco. So overall, staff finds this successful infill. We would recommend some conditions to deal with the issues that I just mentioned. So we would recommend approval with the condition that the metal paneling on the wall be replaced with brick. So it just has a brick wrap so that the brick, where the metal paneling is, that's just replaced with brick. So it would align with the material on the first floor, which would also help simplify the design. In addition to being concerned with metal paneling, we're also concerned with the use of too many different materials, which also doesn't follow the guidelines. So we think more appropriate would just be to have 2 primary wall cladding materials rather than that 3 that's currently proposed. On the porch, we feel that the cladding on the porch posts could either be wood or that could be replaced with steel beams. Then we would recommend a condition that the stucco be cementitious and at least 7/8 of an inch thick. And we would recommend a condition that all windows are inset at least 2 inches from the wall plane.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Yeah, the suggested motion, regarding the porch, wood posts, presumably that would be painted wood posts.
Yeah. So I guess if they wanted to do some kind of clear finish, I think we'd
Is that
also,
acceptable?
I think we'd also, since it's, infill construction, it'd be, I mean, that's up to you, but I would think that as an infill, if they wanted to do some kind of, clear treatment, that would be a paint too.
We just asked generally that, would be finished to make it more durable.
Yeah, that's why I meant it, some kind of treatment so that it's durable, but I think it's fine if it's like visible as being wood.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right, is the applicant present? Or we know you're present. We already talked to you. I'm sorry. So let's go ahead and promote them again. Great. Are they?
They're promoted.
Okay, great. So should be able to unmute and go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
Hi, yeah, like I said, again, my name is Michael. I'm the designer on the project. As far as, I think everything was kind of touched on, but as far as the materials go, we did notice a few of the new infill duplexes, especially of the Italianic style, using metal paneling on the exterior and visible like on the front walls. That's why we went with it. But if that's a design limitation, then that's fine. It's not really used in many areas on this design. We can replace it with brick. It just a little bit, I guess, confused there because it is being used in the Potter Highlands district. But again, not a big deal. Other than that, yeah, we decided to go with colors that reflected the surrounding area, the more reddish colors, and then the black to help accent the beam that will be holding the front porch. It's shown as metal paneling, but that is going to be a steel beam. So that's, I guess, detail that was missed to show you that it will be a steel beam. Other than that, as far as the stucco goes, it will be cementitious. 7/8 is fine. We'll update that detail. Everything else seems like it was touched on. Again, the biggest influence on our design was address 3609, 3611 Zuni Street, also in the Potter Highlands district. That's a historic building that mainly influenced our massing and design options, and it also kind of goes with similar with the colors. That's pretty much all I had, unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? I just have one. So you touched on most of the conditions the staff had recommended, except for the windows. Do you foresee any issue meeting that condition?
No, we'll insert the windows. We'll insert the windows 3 inches. That's fine. That's something that I guess I missed as a requirement. So.
And then you had mentioned that you've seen metal paneling on other infill projects in Potter Highlands. I'm not sure if you've already talked to staff about that, but do you have like certain properties that you were looking at that you saw that?
Yes, let me see if I can find the addresses. I didn't list them. I wasn't kind of anticipating that being an issue.
Yeah,
so,
okay, I'm just curious. We don't typically deal, so I just wanted to give.
I know there's another one. Yeah, there's another one on Alcott Street further down. I believe closer to 38th. But I don't have that address in front of me at the moment, unfortunately.
All right, thanks. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Is there anyone on the line who would like to make a public comment on this project? If so, please use the hand raise button at this time.
Pausing to see if anyone raises a hand. No hands raised. Okay. Then I will stop sharing and agree.
Great. And Abby, I'm sorry, maybe I missed this. Did this go to the R and L for review?
Yes, it did, and I had those comments included in the, mass format contract.
That's right, okay, gotcha. Just want to make sure. Right, and do you have any thoughts on the applicant said big C metal panel? I mean,
Yeah, I'm looking at that now, it's not something we typically,
yeah,
So there's one that I just thought, okay, let me look on Street View for 36 and Alcott up, and there's one near the corner of 36. This was done, I remember this one, and it was done before the guidelines were adopted in 2014. So it's just like a building or two north of 36 on the left side of Alcott, the west side.
but it wouldn't have been held to meeting the guidelines that we have in place today.
Different guidelines.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, great. Any other questions for staff before we deliberate? Okay. So what did everybody think about the design details for this project?
Agree with the staff report. I think overall, it meets the requirements with the exception of the key conditions. And yeah, I agree that that'll, doesn't meet the guidelines. Yeah, like,
I can confirm the other metal neighbors too, because I lived on the block about 12 years ago when they were built before the guidelines. So they do exist, but they were a while back. But yeah, I agree with Larry. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Probably just pull the whole thing back.
okay, are we trying to get credit?
Yeah, I get it.
No, if I show up late, I don't get to be in the video.
Yeah, those are the rules.
Ooh. There we go.
I got you a little bit.
Perfect.
Okay. I think the architect is very accommodating as far as landmark requirements are going, and there's no reason to support application with the changes proposed. I think they would.
I agree, and I agree with the staff recommendations. With the only clarification I have is, I'm not sure we have to prescribe that the metal panel be replaced with brick. Maybe it's replaced with stucco. In their elevations, it kind of seems like there's this awkward cornice detail or parapet detail right at the corner of it, where, I don't know, kind of steps down, like maybe they want to make that brick and continue that parapet detail. Maybe they want to make it stucco and lower it right there. I don't know. It just seems like they could address it a couple ways. So I would be okay with leaving that condition with, being brick or stucco.
Brick or stucco.
Yeah, and revisiting that little corner there. If other commissioners agree, I mean, I think there's no problem with brick in my mind. I just thought it gives a little more flexibility to the applicant.
I agree, and I have a kind of friendly comment for the applicant about the joint between the brick and the stucco. And I think that replacing the metal panel with stucco could be part of this. It's just a friendly comment. I think when you look at the sections, there's no way that those materials meet without a cover plate because the brick is too far forward and you're going to have waterproofing issues. And so the reason I say this is actually not because of the detail, but I think there's going to be a visible line that runs down the building at the joint between the stucco and the brick as it is right now. So if the metal panel is replaced by stucco, it at least eliminates part of that because it's the same material running through.
If there are any other comments, and we're all in agreement, I'd like to make a motion with the changes discussed. That was great.
Okay. Madam Chair, I move to conditionally approve application 2022-COA-028 for the design detail of the proposed infill 3515, 3519 Alkmaar Street as per design guidelines 4.3, 4.5, 4.7, 4.8, 4.16, and 4.20. Character defining features for the Potter Highlands Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation and information provided in the staff report with the following conditions. Metal paneling on the wall to be replaced with brick or stucco. Metal paneling on the porch post to be replaced with wood or stucco. No. Stucco to be cementation stucco at least 7/8 of an inch thick, and all windows to be inset at least 2 inches from the wall.
Thanks, George. Do we have a second?
Do we have a second before friendly
Yes.
amendment? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll second and then make a friendly amendment.
Right.
That the front porch language reflect porch posts to be steel, beam, or wood posts instead of the stucco.
Steel beam or wood post instead of stucco, since you're very quiet over there
Yeah, sorry.
for the porch.
Yep, as written.
Great, so, and with George, you
I'm fine.
Randy seconded, but of course. All right. There's no further discussion on the motion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right. Motion passes unanimously and the project is conditionally approved. So, you can work with staff to meet those conditions and good luck moving forward. Okay, next design review project under review is 2023-COA-024 at 3534 North Bryant Street.
Camera on.
Thirty-four thirty-five.
34.
Did I?
I think you were right.
That
It's
address,
a couple of
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a project at 3435 Bryant Street, which was built in 1889. And this is a contributing structure to the Potter Highlands Historic District. At the top of the screen, you can see a streetscape view of the structure, which is on a wide interior lot, and below is a more current photo with an existing horizontal wood cut. To the right, you can see an overview map showing the property's location. The applicant is requesting to demolish the rear portion of the house, approximately 25.3% of the structure, to add a new 2-story side and rear addition to the primary structure. Oh, sorry. I'm doing my job. There you go. So here you can see the site plan for the existing zone lot showing the side and rear addition in a darker gray color at the rear of the structure. The left side of the screen is a photo of the existing structure showing the rear portion, which will be demolished and incorporated into the new addition. Additional site work and alterations will include a new patio area at the rear side of the addition, as well as new canopy units and egress window wells for the basement layout. So at the left side here, you can see the proposed addition from the front facade. The current structure is approximately 20 feet wide, and the new side portion of the addition will add approximately 11 feet, 8 inches of width to the structure protruding into the side yard. Design guideline 3.1 states to locate an addition to be subordinate to the original structure. However, this large 2-story side and rear addition does not appear to be subordinate to the original structure. It calls attention to the addition with a large balcony above the 1-story part of the addition that will be highly visible from public vantage points and competes with the historic structure visually. Additionally, design guideline 3.2 states to locate an addition to retain open space patterns and to avoid removing existing open space with a large addition, which this does. To the right side, you can see the rear of the proposed addition, which utilizes brick and shiplap siding, as well as a more atypical style doors and windows, which are not commonly found in the district. Though the roof of the new structure appears to be compatible from the front facade view of the structure, the combination of the 3 rear gable ends does seem overly complex. Additionally, the applicant did contact staff after the application was posted and stated the intent was to use the Welshire red brick color, which you can see here at the bottom right, instead of the black diamond style, which was in the application. Staff has concerns that the Welshire brick color may match too closely with the front of the existing structure and would not meet design guideline 3.4B, which states do not design an addition to be an exact copy of the existing style of the original structure. So here's the south side elevation, which will be highly visible as the side yard. Again, the applicant did contact staff after the application was posted, stated the intent is to use that Welshire brick at the brick portions and a shiplap siding both vertically and horizontally. The application was unclear and staff originally thought the horizontal siding was supposed to be fiber cement lap siding. Staff does have concerns over the amount of shiplap siding proposed for the structure, as design guideline 3.6 states to use materials that appear similar to those seen historically on the primary structure or in the historic context. Shiplap siding is not a common material in the historic district. Additionally, staff is concerned about the prominence of the first floor balcony and traditional railing. And here you can see the north elevation as well as the canopy connector to the garage. Again, we can see those two cladding materials, the horizontal shiplap siding at the second floor and that Welshire brick at the first floor. So here you can see the floor plans for the basement, first and second floors, as well as the roof plan. Staff does have concerns about the complexity of the rear roof plan and gables, though the roof does appear compatible from the front facade. However, staff is concerned that the overall size and scale of the addition is not subordinate or compatible with the contributing structure. And then here you can see some proposed isometric views at the top showing the tree that the applicant plans to keep in the side yard, and the bottom is isometric without that tree of that proposed addition. And finally, here's some additional isometric views showing the addition from the street and at the bottom from the rear. The new two-story side addition and rear addition to the contributing structure is highly visible from public right-of-way and competes with the visual prominence of the front facade of the contributing structure. The new two-story side addition's overall height, as well as the large width of the side addition and the placement of the new large balcony above that wide one-story portion of the side addition on the structure all contribute to the overwhelming visual impact to the contributing structure, making the addition not subordinate to the historic structure. The addition does not meet guidelines 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.6, 3.7, 3.9, or 3.10. Therefore, staff is recommending denial.
Are there any questions for staff? Right, is the applicant present?
We're here, but our architect on the phone, I believe,
Oh, yeah.
or on Zoom or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Just raise his hand. Great. Are you presenting or saying?
We're gonna combo, but I think Robin's gonna go first.
Okay, when you're gonna present, stand here and it's very low, so you can step back, so it's not right up your nose.
Okay. Step way back.
Yeah. And it'll be, 10 minutes for everyone,
Okay.
so, yeah, whenever you're ready, and we'll just need, anyone who speaks will need the name and address. Great. All right, so go ahead and get started whenever you're ready.
Okay, very well. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep, okay, good, just checking. Sound check. So my name's Robin Adams and I'm with ArcWest Architects and working with Ryan and Krista from the beginning on this design. And so I want to try to briefly cover 3 specific design factors that we considered when we developed the solution that we're presenting today. And we feel it, it fits into the context of the Potter Highlands landmark neighborhood, excuse me, program. Really, much like a lot of folks, they want a more modern lifestyle. These older homes are great, but they don't really afford space for a family. And so they're looking for additional living space, like most folks, living kitchen, as well as a primary bedroom space. And then incidental to that is they really want to create a strong connection to the outdoor, which they have now. So they're looking for that side yard connection from their living kitchen to the outside yard. Secondly, in terms of the design factor, facially, you'll see Ryan over there shortly when he stands up. He's 6'7" tall, not a small fry. And so that's a fairly significant consideration when we're looking at these historic homes, trying to design roof plates that match, the character of the people who are going to be occupying it. So traditionally, you could go to a 6'8" plate and sloping roofs, and that might be okay, but for Ryan and his wife, it doesn't really work. And probably one of the larger factors that kind of influenced her design was the zoning. The placement of the existing house encroaches 4 feet to the north of the property line. And so with that, in order to respect the setback requirements, automatically our addition had to push to the side. And programmatically, that also kind of required us to push to the side, but we have the benefit in the unusual situation of the 50-foot wide lot. So with these factors, we tried to create a proposed design that was respectful of the landmark guidelines. So, roof height and roof form are mentioned. The actual roof ridge that we're looking at from the front is 3 feet lower than the peak of the actual existing house. And then that aligns with the lower roof ridge of the existing house as well. So we considered a lower roof pitch to bring that down and potentially make it more subordinate. But the challenge with that is the character of that roof gable would not be consistent with the style of the home. So that was a factor. In terms of massing, we really felt that actually having a single story leading to a 2-story was the correct solution. And I will note that that first story starts at the very corner of the existing home, some 43 feet back. So although it's going to be seen and there's a tree that, screens it is still, drawings aside, I think in real life, it's going to appear subordinate to the overall, to the existing house as a whole. But yeah, with that approach, we basically have a single story that is a strong connecting element that leads to the 2-story element, which sits even further back. The ridge line of that roof element is at 63 feet, which is basically the middle of the property. So it's substantially at the rear of the property. And I think in reality, if you're walking down the street, it's not going to be as dominant as it's being perceived. And then so in terms of materials, we're looking at a complementary red brick that's going to wrap the base of the house. And then using a horizontal siding similar to a lap siding, but not exactly like the clean lines of the chip lap. And we felt that that was the appropriate materiality for the project. And then lastly, in terms of side yard use, yes, we're stepping out 12 feet to address zoning and the program. We are leaving 14 feet of the side yard, which is, not characteristic of other properties in the neighborhood. Most of them are side to side. So, and then one last consideration for the design is having that overhang that provides shade to the living spaces from the south, so that during the warmer months of the year, we're getting natural cooling to the house and not just baking on the side. So finally, I think our project meets the intents of the noted design guidelines. Our main facade, as visible from the public street, is unaltered. The original historic structure remains intact, with the new addition again starting at the back, at the very rear corner of the original house. So hopefully with this insight and the different considerations that we've shown, we hope you view, favorably our proposed addition and respectfully request a motion for approval. We appreciate your time and consideration. I'm going to hand it to Ryan because I know he has a few things he would like to touch on.
I have slides that occurred to me, but I didn't put them up. Do you want them?
Oh, actually, yeah, I think I'm going to talk to those, and so that's perfect. Yeah.
I paused the time for everyone's knowledge. There we go. All right, so just let me know when you're.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
So my name is Brian Stalker, 3435 Bryant, and Krista Chopka, 3435 Bryant, we're the homeowners. I think I'll touch on a few things that Robin touched on to, I guess, add to that a little bit. Ultimately, we feel like we've got a unique, challenging project that we've challenged ArcWest with, and I think we've gone through 12 or so iterations of massing to try to get this program to work on the lot. When it's a fairly unique lot, at least for our particular block. There's not a lot of 50-foot wide lots, which kind of creates that central, bulk plane, which kind of pushes things to be built to the center of the lot. So that was one challenge that we, tried to work through as we put all this together. Also say that Potter Highlands is unique, meaning I think on the slide up there, you see a lot of kind of similar characteristic type homes to what we're proposing, and at least in our minds. But you can also walk around and see Queen Anne's and bungalows and duplexes. And so it's not just sort of all Victorians so that uniqueness, I think, in a way kind of widens the possibilities of what can be built in the historic district. What else do I want to say? So maybe if you go, Jen, if you're controlling, go to that next one even. So yeah, those are some of the same images that I think Crystal put in her report. And then.
Sorry, it's very slow.
Okay.
That one?
Yeah, that's fine. So this was just a good example, I think, to us of a similar side addition that I think my understanding is this was approved under the current guidelines. And, so the same kind of visible side addition that worked out for this particular property a couple blocks away from us. And you can go to the next one, Jen. And then this is an older side addition that's very much in character with the original home. So this one I think wasn't approved under the current guidelines, but nonetheless is only about a block and a half away from us. And it's kind of still, adding its context and its character to the existing neighborhood. And then one more. And then this one is up the street about a block and a half from us on Bryant. And this one maybe is the most similar, and there's only one view of it, but it does kind of have that side addition first story bump out there in the back with the railing on top. And then this is a corner lot. So around the corner on 37th, you can see, the full second story addition behind that balcony as well. So I think my point there is we're not trying to set any new precedent in the neighborhood. We feel like there's some examples of maybe what we're trying to do right around us. And then probably the last thing I'll throw out there is we do feel like we have really good neighborhood support. And I don't know if the folks around the table are familiar with the name Eve Talon, but she's been a resident for 40 years. She was instrumental in actually getting Potter Highlands designated as a historic district. And then Jen, if you go to the big slide of our proposed, that's basically Eve's view, because she lives right across the street from us. She doesn't like change. She doesn't like additions. She doesn't like any of it. But she was on board once we talked her through the plans. She felt like that was reasonable. And some of the brick, the red brick was actually her suggestion. The more traditional railing up there on the balcony was actually her suggestion as well. And she used to be part of Honey, the neighborhood organization. And so we tried to take all of that into account while we were putting together everything for the design. And then the last thing I'll say is we did receive a support letter from Honey. And I think the biggest thing that I wanted to quote from that letter is the proposed massing is restrained and secondary to the original structure. It is primarily behind the historic house and mostly hidden from the street. So that's kind of where we feel we're at with the overall application. Thank you.
Are there any, and you can hold on a second because we'll see if there are any questions.
Okay.
Any questions for the applicant, either the architect or owner?
Yes, I have a question, and maybe it's also kind of a staff question with regards to the bulk plane consideration, since the LPC does have
some flexibility to allow violations of the bulk plane. Was that discussed between the architect and staff?
Yes, I did bring that up in our pre-application meeting, but they seem settled with the design. Could you share that a little louder? I did bring up the administrative adjustments can be given if the design is compatible for both plane and height, and they've kind of been set on this design the whole time. There have been tweaks, but this is overall pretty close to the original design I saw several months ago.
Thank you.
And I don't know if I can add to that, but and I don't know if there may be a slide that you show this on, but the neighbor immediately to the north, right across the property line, is set all the way back in their lot. So if we build to that north property line with a full rear addition, we completely block their entire main property from southern exposure and sun, and basically they just have our house right next to their house in the rear lot there. So we were trying to be respectful of that neighbor as well.
That's good context.
Other questions for the applicant? No? Okay, very good. Thank you, Robin, for your time. Are there any public comments for this project? If so, please use the hand raise button at this time. I don't see anyone in person.
I don't see any hands being raised either.
Okay. And as the applicant mentioned, we do have the honey letter that recommended approval. You know, they had a couple comments on color, but that would really come into the design details.
Well, this is an addition, so there wouldn't be a design details phase.
Oh, that's right.
Phase.
Sorry.
So I did note that in the staff report. I also just wanted to mention that first slide where they had all the addresses, I didn't receive that until January 29th after our staff report was already written. So the only property I got to research was 3405 Elcott prior to the meeting.
Did you have any comments on that, Eva? Photos share. All right, then let's move into deliberation. Commissioners, how did you feel this does or does not meet guidelines?
And speak up since we have people who you're kind of have your back to and
Right,
yeah.
So apologies, the speakers on that end, so let us know if you're not hearing.
Okay. I have just seeing this in isolation would have some reservations about the subordination of the addition to the original house. However, the other properties that have been shown that were developed after Potter Highlands guidelines, that cat seems to have been out of the bag. So we have the ability to say this one and not that one, because the bulk is certainly bulk. It is certainly visible. But there are other. I think the precedent has kind of been set for this style and under the circumstances. I think the applicant has made some good efforts as far as due diligence, speaking with neighborhood gurus and concern for their next door neighbor. But, I'm really kind of on the fence here. It does not look subordinate to me, and that would be not within the guidelines, but on the other hand, it seems that other properties have been approved, so I'm not sure where to go on that. So I can be convinced either way if the other commissioners have opposed arguments.
Yeah, what does everybody else think?
Well, I'll chime in, I guess. I appreciate the study also, and having lived and walked around this neighborhood quite a bit, it's a challenging district because it is so unique, right? To draw context, there's a lot of different eras going on. I think one of the things that many of the examples that were shared, though, is that In some cases, that side feature was either a very old addition, a historic addition, or a second side gable that may have been a part of, even the original design. So I think, George, to your point, they exist, but based on what we're considering here with our current guidelines, and looking at the way that the offset works, which again is being respectful of the neighbors' daylight. We talked about that with solar and all kinds of things. Unfortunately, not the purview of this commission. The shift from the 5-foot setback, which the building encroaches on, plus the shift to stay in the bulk plane for the second floor, it kind of is, it's not equal, but you've got 10 feet or so of projection and you've got 10 feet or so of bulk plane that's being played with on that other side. So I guess I'm curious to hear what others think about that too. I wasn't as swayed by the existing conditions argument just because so many of those, unfortunately, before our current guidelines.
I think there are many things about this project that actually work pretty well because it is to the back, and I think the way that it's sort of fractured is very respectful both of the primary dwelling and also of other additions. And I keep looking at guideline 3.4A, which has to do with an offset, and I think that on the north side, the offset works really well. And the place where I have a problem with this is actually on the south side, and that's the projecting piece, which is patio and a balcony. And I know we can't be prescriptive, but I really feel like if the balcony and the patio were eliminated, the patio could still be there, just with covered, then this project, I think, would probably do a pretty good job of meeting the guidelines because it would be the projecting portion on the side yard so far back that I think would have less of an impact on the front facade.
I think that's a really good point, and I struggled with this one too. I understand that it's very visible from the street, but they also have a very big side yard, and we have approved. I mean, if you look at the aerial, it's not like or the site plan. They are working with the space between the existing garage and the existing home, and then it is kind of encroaching into the side, but I don't think it's heavily altering the open space patterns. You still have a side yard and a backyard. And so I think actually the siting is, in my mind, meets our guidelines and is appropriate for the conditions that they're dealing with. I also think I agree, it's clearly identifiable as new. And so I think there are a lot of good things about the addition. And what I was struggling with is whether that second story like balcony area is appropriate or not, or could that even move to the, could they shift that to the rear so that it's not visible? The downside is, then your two-story portion mass is coming closer to the front of the house, so it will be more prominent. So in one case, having the balcony at the front, gives that tiered effect, it's further from the street, which is nice. So I don't know. The balcony is the part that I was kind of struggling with personally.
What if it was a balcony without that wall protecting the patio? So it was more like a light touch instead of the heavy wall. I mean, if they're looking for privacy, then you could put a hedge along there, which we don't review that if you want privacy, there's other methods to get that from that patio. But I feel that it's that solid wall that really is the visual impact there and not so much the balcony, which could be, has less mass overall.
So right here, so
So the only thing I kind of like about that wall is, they do have occupied space above. So if you get rid of that down on the first floor, you've got a cantilever, which is quite unusual in our historic districts. So I feel like then you're kind of creating an unusual condition that's not really Is that right?
That's not true. It's the opposite. So their kitchen extends out a little bit. It's not a full wall. It's partial wall of partial enclosed spaces.
Okay.
Like A1.2.
But on A1.2, that brick wall that projects out to the south there, that goes to grid line I. And on level 2, grid line I is occupiable all the way to that grid line.
But not where the balcony is.
Yeah, the master bedroom.
Yeah,
stuff.
so already it was going to cantilever where the master bedroom is.
Yeah, but that wall on the first plane makes it from the street look like it's not cantilevered. Whereas if you remove that, then now from the street, you're looking at like a volume on the second story that cantilevers over open space on the first, which that is quite unusual, I think, in our historic district. So I think that's the nice thing about having that wall there is that from the front, from the street, it's shielding that.
To that point, that second floor balcony terrace area is sort of necessary as a separator. Like you said, if you eliminate that, you're going to shove the whole thing, put it to the back, you're going to shove the whole thing up the front. And then it really has some height.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily concerned that it lacks subordination. It's more just the complexity of materials, and with due respect to the neighbor who was on Honey, who suggested the kind of historic railing. I think a more simplified railing would actually make it feel more subordinate to me, and make me not that concerned about really that patio element or balcony element drawing attention. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Kelly's points about the citing, and then also I think the fact that they've used the side gable so that they're not adding an additional front-facing gable, I think helps make it feel pretty subordinate.
It sounds like we've got a few different thoughts, so I'd like to hear, I don't think we're at a point where I hear a consensus. So from some people who've been more quiet, what are your thoughts on this?
I'd like to move towards conditional approval. Can't come up with the conditions to delineate that, because it kind of addresses all the things that you said. I'm not concerned about subordination. I think the combination of kind of contemporary design and references to historical features is overly complicated in a way, especially where that patio and that patio extension and how second story sits on it, and balcony. I just think all of that can be, the same mass can be accommodated with exterior materials that are a bit more traditional, which would make it more compatible and sort of less complicated. In other words, if there was more thought as to how to accomplish those programmatic elements in a more traditional manner, I think it could be more successful in meeting the guidelines and addressing our concerns. I'm not sure that was helpful for this. That wall that it kind of shields the main level patio from the street. I think is partly contributes to the complexity and the way the wood-sided second floor addition sits on that also kind of creates kind of complexity that contributes to its lack of ability to fit into the neighborhood context. I'm not concerned with the size of the addition. I think the open space of the larger lot kind of maintains itself. So I think it's a matter of how the exterior is expressed architecturally is the issue as opposed to just how big it is. And I think the roof lines are fine. I think the roof lines on the back are overly complicated, but I don't think I think that's more of a construction issue than a guideline issue. But I can't see how we could come up with a list of conditions
Right.
that would allow conditional approval.
I agree, and I think, that doesn't have to be our goal. It might be easier for them to not have to meet prescriptive conditions, to be able to address comments there.
Can we pull up the roof plan, which is 1.4?
Yeah, I think. Fine.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I think there's, I agree with Gary, I think there's a very salvageable, there's a really great project here. If you look at 1.4, roof plan,
Yeah,
I think it,
top right.
yeah, I think that roof plan, in theory, would meet our guidelines. I mean, just the shape of the massing, so it's not asking I would say, not asking the applicant to have less volume or anything else, but when you look at that seems like a very reasonable footprint that would actually match our guidelines. And to Gary's point, when you look at the roof, it does look a little bit complicated, but to me, the applicant's sort of going in the right direction. And look at that, that's a great direction to go in.
So we talked about the siting, and just to make sure we're all on the same page here, it sounds like as far as the mass goes, the siting, commissioners generally feel that does meet our guidelines. It's more in some of these details of how the outdoor porch and detailing railing and those sorts of things come together. Is that accurate? And then I'd like us to maybe touch on materials, because if they're gonna have to resubmit, we should provide them with enough comments to address all of the issues that we have. Okay, so let's talk about materials a little bit more. Gary started to touch on it.
Well, I was looking at the staff report to kind of figure out if we were going to deny this, which I think is the direction we need to go, because we cannot come up. We can't prescribe a solution to meet our concerns. Guidelines 3.1 and 3.2 are not the basis of our objection, because both of those have to do with subordination and the retention of open space. I think it is more to do with primarily guideline 3.3 and how the walls are addressed architecturally. I think the problem is the way that open-sided patio on the main floor is expressed architecturally. And I don't, beyond saying that that's the problem, I don't know how that, I think that's an architect's dilemma, so.
Yeah. And what about though, so guideline 3.6, these materials that appear similar in scale, color, texture, finish to those historically found in the context. So that, staff was kind of flagging that shiplap siding is not historically found. Do we have any comments on that?
I think that that's a position I think you should support. That don't introduce, if you're going to have lap siding, have lap siding. Don't complicate it by having other kinds of siding as well.
Yeah. Everyone agreed with that? You tried to give that direction. Okay. And then, the windows and doors, they do have some atypical windows, larger openings on the first floor. They're not super visible from the street. Did anyone have any concerns about those? No. I mean, we've approved those sorts of things on the rear, I think. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that we're hitting all of the points. And then, we've already touched on 3.9, locating an addition to be subordinate. It sounds like we all feel that they have successfully met that guideline. And 3.10, design an addition to be compatible with but differentiated from the existing structure.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand, the comment about the concern of the red brick. I'm not concerned that the red brick that's proposed is too much like the existing brick.
Does everyone else agree with that, or? are
Yeah,
there
I
any
mean,
concerns
I
about
was just, I think the interesting combination on the historic structure is that the front facade appears to have been relaid or restored at a different time, and then the rest of the house is painted. So I don't know that we really have a good visual of what the actual historic brick might be for the home. So I would agree with Gary that I think as long as it's not, entumbled, it looks like it had kind of a salvage whitewash look, right? Which, but otherwise, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, the only comment I had about the brick wasn't so much the color as the detailing, how it brings in some banding from the existing that kind of, I don't know, I'm on the fence about it, whether it's too replicative or not.
I think that's the piece there that I've come back to, and you kind of made the comment first about how it wraps the corner nicely, but then that heaviness of the wall and the void space
Yeah.
behind it. It's not our guidelines, but think a lot about how historic buildings sort of grow over time, and a rear addition and kind of an L addition, like this, almost a farmhouse kind of thing. The two-story, the side gable, all of that makes a lot of sense, and almost taking the rendering, and without that, the fact that it's half cantilevered, half interior space is, of course, a design challenge, but that front kind of cubic volume that creates the upper porch and the lower half kitchen, half patio is a part that is harder to read, I think, historically. You can, I think, really clearly create a story that says, hey, there was a rear addition here with an L that may have had a little side porch, but the big sort of box volume is the piece of it. And we said that over and over, but I think detailing that in a way that draws a higher style to it, maybe one more of the pieces that as the applicants consider, that's more simple, or if that's different, that helps to tone that part of it back.
All right, I think, does that give you enough information? Still to move forward with this, is there anything else you wanted us to weigh in on? Or, okay. We tried to touch on all the good guidelines that were highlighted. Okay. Great, well, it sounds like we've come to consensus, and someone would like to make a motion.
And just tweak the guidelines.
Oh, that's true, yeah, so we discussed that we feel it meets 3.1 and 3.2, so we should not be referencing those as part of the denial. And 3.10, we felt like it met that, right? That was 3.9.
For 3.82, do we decide the roof generally?
Oh, 3.9 and 10. So we removed 3.1, 3.2, 3.9, 3.10. Which one did you say, Graham?
I think it was 3.9 as well for the, or no, actually 3.8 is listed in the staff report, but not listed in the motion. And that talks about the reform, which I think is generally acceptable.
Okay.
Based on our conversation. So
Well,
it's not
and the
there, but it
windows,
doesn't.
3.7, we didn't have a problem with those, right? Those were on the rear, or not visible from the street. Okay, so it's really 3.3 and 3.6 that are the big sticky points. Okay. With that, who's going to make the motion?
Madam Chair, I will. Madam Chair, I move to deny application 2023-0-024 for the large two-story side and rear addition at 3554 North Bryant Street as design guidelines 3.3 and 3.6. Presented testimony and the documentation and information provided in the staff report.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, George, for seconding. There's no further discussion on the motion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right, motion passes unanimously and the project is denied, but I think you're close. So good luck. You can work with staff to be, come up with an alternative design. Right. Thank you. Thanks. So next up for design review is, project number 2023-COA-026. At 2841 and 2845 West 36. So everything today is Potter Highway.
Yeah.
So our last project of the day is actually two single-family infill residences. However, they're exactly the same. So I do have them on one staff report, and I would love to present them together as to not waste additional commission time. So the proposed infill structure will take the place of a non-contributing structure within the Potter Highlands Historic District. It's this small single-story structure that you see on the screen. The commission did approve for the demolition of the structure and a zone lot amendment to the site on June 6, 2021. So that has already been approved for demolition. This site is in the middle of the Potter Highlands Historic District. Essentially, you can see the project location here on the map indicated by the red and yellow circle. And then the district outline is just that kind of pink brown area. Not working. I'll do it. So it is two single-family residences. 2841 is on the right of your screen, and 2845 is on the left of your screen. These are single-family homes that are 21 feet tall, and they do have detached one-story garages in the rear of the property. This is a revised proposal from what the R&O reviewed. The R&O reviewed a structure that was essentially mirrored. The R&O did recommend that it have this configuration on the lots as opposed to the mirrored configuration. And then the applicant has also redesigned the roof form. So some of the comments from the R&O letter are addressed in the form that you see before you today. So here is the building footprint. These structures will be centered on their respective lots with 3-foot setbacks, side yard setbacks. The front yard setback is 17 feet to the front patio that extends across the front of the home. And then the structures will have a covered porch on the east side of each home. That is the only covered portion, but there is a patio that extends across. And then they will have detached garages in the rear. The detached garages are do not feature a side yard setback on the east side for 2841 and on the west side for 2845. So they are visible from the public right of way. However, these lots are very deep in width, so it will have minimal visual impact on the public right of way. And then the overall building footprints are 19 feet of street frontage, just a little over 19 feet actually. And then about 53 feet of depth on the zone lot. This is all within the front 65 foot zone lot. So here are the floor plans. Again, these are exactly the same structure, but you're seeing the basement plan, the level 1 floor plan, and level 2 floor plan for both of these structures on this image here. They are separate in your packet submittal, but I actually took those from applicant's presentation. So we'll have a patio that extends to the west, and then it's covered above the primary entrance, which is recessed a little bit from the front facade in the wall plane. There is a balcony on the rear of the structure at the second floor, and then there will be also basement level access here. In terms of compatibility with the existing street context, this area of Potter Highlands actually is lower scale in nature with 1 and 1.5 story structures. The proposed structure is 21 feet in height. The max zoning for this zone district is 30 feet, so they are well below the max zoning. But the height in terms of the relationship is a little bit taller than the surrounding historic context because it's a little bit lower scale here in this portion of Potter Highlands. However, that's very typical of the Potter Highlands Historic District to have a variety of heights and forms, and staff do not feel that the height is overscale and will overwhelm the surrounding streetscape. So while it is a bit taller, we do feel that is appropriate. And then in terms of the ground plan comparison, you can see that it does have a similar footprint on the lot and placement on the lot as to the surrounding context in terms of front yard setback, size and depth, and the placement of the garages. So here are the front elevations for each structure. 2841 is on the left and 2845 is on the right. They are similar. I do have concerns that this has a floor-to-floor height that is not typical of the Potter Highlands Historic District. So while the floor-to-floor heights on Potter Highlands are typically with the ground floor taller, this has a second floor that is taller than the first floor. However, this may be appropriate if the exterior expression of this structure is changed to give the appearance of a taller ground floor height versus first floor height. So we would recommend moving that string course up on this proposal a little bit to better reflect the floor-to-floor heights of the Potter Highlands Historic District. However, that is more of a design detail submittal, so we don't have that as a condition currently in our application, but I do want to point it out to the commission now and to the applicant early, as I do have some concerns over the exterior brick expression. However, generally speaking, I do think these floor-to-floor heights could work for this district, even though they are somewhat atypical. Here is the side elevations. They are the same for both structure. So the the east and west elevations are exactly the same. So you do get more variety in window openings and types on this elevation. On the ground floor, the windows are a bit larger, and then they're a bit smaller on the second floor. There is flexibility for different size window openings per our guidelines, and we do feel that these will have minimal visual impact on the surrounding historic context due to the tight setbacks on this lot. You can also see the one-story garage structure here, but I will talk more about the garage later. So here's the rear of the project proposal. Again, this is pretty simple in design. It's pulling from the Italianate and terrace forms within the district. It does have that balcony on the second floor, but I do believe that is in the front portion of the zone lot, so it wouldn't require any adjustments from zoning on that. In terms of the garage, it's just a simple boxy footprint. My staff report does note ADU, but it is a garage. There is no habitable space in here, so it's just a single-story garage, approximately 10 feet in height, very boxy form, similar to the primary structure. It will be wider than the primary structure, but the lots are really deep, so we feel that it will have minimal visual impact on the surrounding context. In terms of how this structure is, these structures are compatible with the surrounding historic context. Again, the applicant is pulling from the Italianate form and terrace form within the district. So they did initially start as duplex structures, and then they moved to mirrored structures, and now they are more a sister house as recommended by the Potter Highlands Historic District. So on this slide, I have the applicant's compatibility demonstration. Then I just pulled some more Italianate and terrace forms within the Potter Highlands Historic District. You do typically see these as multifamily residences, but this is a style and form that you do see within the Potter Highlands Historic District, and it does help distinguish it as new construction within the district. So staff are comfortable with the single-family home form having this Italianate form. And then I did pull these two, what the Potter Highlands designation would call Edwardian structures, which are essentially sister houses, just to show that where that comment is coming from the neighborhood, where you do have a number of houses which have the same kind of architectural detailing, style, massive form adjacent to each other within the neighborhood, although this is an entirely different form from what that is. So here are just some isometric views of these two structures. We have 2845, more prominent on the left side of the screen, and then 2841 more prominent on the right side of the screen. Again, exactly the same structures, so not much to note there. And then a visual with that garage, more visible from 2841. So staff are recommending approval of the mass form and context, as we feel that some of the elements that are of concern can be worked out in the design detail.
Are there any questions for staff?
I just have a simple one. Are you aware if there's any multi-point violations?
There shouldn't be, because the max height for this is, for this zone district is 30 feet, and this is only 21 feet, so it should be within the height in both planes, but there might be between that, but it's not indicated.
And it looks like they met all of the recommendations that Honey had recommended, right?
I think the vast majority of them they did. Let me check. This has gone through several iterations, so.
Sure. The window heights of the second story, I don't know what they originally submitted, but they seemed pretty typical.
Yeah, they were not this.
Okay.
We are seeing.
That was the one that I was wondering. It looks like the other one.
Yeah, this has been significantly revised to the.
Okay.
That's all.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know if it's for you or for the applicant, but can you speak at all about why the houses were unmirrored?
I think it was the comment from the RNO that recommended, the RNO letter said they be of a hand.
Yeah, the RNO recommended it be for privacy.
I know, I just wanted to be, I read that. And
about that, we had some concerns when they were initially mirrored and the depth of the porch, because that front was super set back. So they did pull that up forward some when they went to this design where they're kind of sister houses. But you do see mirrored structures within the Potter Highlands Historic District as well. So I think we would have been okay with a mirrored appearance with the adjustments to the massing that you're seeing here.
There's no more questions for staff. Let's go ahead and hear from the applicant.
Bunch of people, forgive me. Give Taylor a moment.
Yeah. And then they do have their presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Great. So, all right. Let's get the timer up. Give us just
I'm gonna
a
stop
second.
sharing just a second, because I realized that hi, now we can see. There we go, we've got that, and just let me know when you are ready to,
Not seeing that.
yeah, hi, because I am not sharing the screen, thank you. I can see it. Having a day. All right, now you can see it.
There we go.
All right, you have up to 10 minutes, and between you and anyone who is going to be speaking, if you could just give us your name and address for the record, that'd be great.
You want our names now or introduce ourselves?
However you'd like to do, who you can introduce as you start. If you're kind of handing off, the next person can introduce later, or if you'd like to give intros
We
right
do have
away.
a slide,
That's up to you.
so. I think Brittany did a great job kind of introducing our project, so we'll keep it pretty brief and just reiterate a couple of points. And then I'll probably be having you kind of fly through some of these slides. But as she mentioned, this is for 2 single families on West 36. If you go to the next slide, please, that has our information. So I'm Dorothy Ma. I'm with Make Architecture. We also have Abby from my office who's been working on this project on the call. And then I'll have the ownership group introduce themselves just briefly, as well as Nadine, who's been kind of consulting and helping put this package together. So Damon and Bobby, I think you guys are muted. There you go.
Hi, my name is Damon and this is Bobby. We're the builders owners.
For the record, so Damon, is your last name Decker?
Correct.
And Bobby, what's your last name?
Tobin.
Tobin. Okay, it's on the screen. Got out of the way.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah.
And we'll just need addresses for everybody as well.
Okay. The address for me is 8905 Ridgepoint Way, Castle Pines, 80108.
And address for Damon Decker is 3333 Bryant Street. So I live a couple blocks from this project.
Robert, Bobby Tobin. I'm at 7149 East Peakview Place in Centennial, Colorado, 80111.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, next slide, please. So I'll fly through these pretty quickly. Obviously, you guys are aware it's the Potter Highlands Historic District. We're Zone UTUB. We are proposing 2 single families with a lot split. So next slide will show this. So you can see this is located at 36 and Elliott, and there's our lot in red. It's an interior lot, deep with an alley in the back. Next slide, please. This is the site plan showing the 2 lots and they're identical layouts and floor plans. And I know we had that discussion. I can answer that mirror question later on. Next slide, please. As Brittany mentioned, our front setback to the porch is about 17.5, and then to the building is at 22. So this kind of just shows our block study, indicating our compatibility with the front setbacks as well as site setbacks. So we believe our proposal is compatible with that, at most of these being 22 feet, which is similar to what we are showing. And next slide. Brittany showed this already, but it kind of just shows the block height in terms of how we relate to the existing neighborhood. And our height is at approximately just under 21 feet. Next slide, please. These are the 3 main compatibility demonstrations that we use. So really using that Italianate style and a lot of these key features that we are also utilizing in our design, which includes the flat roof, the porch that's kind of partial in front, a recessed entry, raised foundation, which you see in 2 of the 3, but pretty typical in a lot of the Italianate styles that we see around the neighborhoods. And in terms of height, our building is proposing 2 stories, and that's also compatible with most of these as well. And then again, this kind of shows you where we are pulling those projects in terms of how that relates to our site. And we can just kind of fly through these and maybe go to the elevation. Yeah, so floor plan, these are 2 levels with a full basement. I guess I could touch on the RNO did recommend that instead of mirroring, and mainly, as Brittany mentioned, it was due to privacy. I think they were more concerned about the windows kind of looking right into each other. So we've also made some of those adjustments of making sure we kind of didn't directly aim the windows at each other so that, you know, there was no direct line of sight into the buildings because of the proximity of these buildings to each other and the lot line. And then kind of offsetting those to create more privacy. Next slide. Can you go to the elevation? Next one, please.
Hold on, I'm pausing you. Yeah, it's just,
freezing.
Decided I paused your time. There we go.
Oh, wait.
It went.
Yep, there we go. There we go. So again, I think we just want to reiterate, you know, these are some of the key elements of the Italianate style that we see in the neighborhood and also in the Italianate design. So we originally had a much larger porch that wrapped around the front, you know, based on some of the recommendations from the RNO and staff. We reduced that to just kind of covering the front entry. Also, we added the exposed kind of raised foundation that we mentioned earlier, the flat roof, the brick cornice and the detailing, also the windows, the single hung windows. We went around and measured some of the window dimensions that are typical in the neighborhood. And also adding the transom to the front door, which also is something that we've seen by walking the neighborhood and a lot of the comparisons. So that's kind of the gist of it. I think if you want to just go to the perspectives at the end, you know, we're happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
I just have one, just curious, I know that it's not materials of the mass form and context, but is there a reason for the kind of inverted floor to floor heights?
No, you know, we do agree, actually. I don't know if that was just something that might have been off when we were adjusting everything. So we agree with Brittany. We do want, you know, that typical ground floor to be the taller floor to floor, and then the second story to be the shorter. So we're actually going to go ahead and adjust that with the 10 feet floor to floor at the first level, and then the 9 feet at the second level.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Well, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll open it up for public comments. Is there anyone on the line who would like to make a public comment on this project at this time? Please use the hand raise button. So, all right, it doesn't look like it. So we'll go ahead and move into deliberation unless there's a recap. All right.
And Taylor's in the process of switching the applicant team back over, so there we go.
Okay, commissioners, what did you think of the phase one?
Of course, meets guidelines.
I was wondering if we have ever seen two Italianate sister houses.
In Curtis Park, yes, but it's not, it's probably before your time. Yeah.
The thing that I'm sort of curious about for the other commissioners is that when I looked at this, it looked to me like someone had rearranged the pieces incorrectly. That really, because all of the compatibility studies, when they showed the two Italianates, they were duplexes and they were mirrored. And this looks like two mirrored duplexes to me that just got pulled apart. And I understand the compatibility, the 5 foot, the issue with privacy, but I think probably when this was really designed, there were stairwells on both of those. That's what was in the middle, which is kind of a classic view. And it just, I guess I had it, when I looked, I kept looking at this and thinking that it just looks like the pieces are arranged in a way that doesn't really fit any kind of neighborhood pattern. I understand sister houses, you know, the two sister houses, which were, I don't know, Victorians, whatever they were, the Queen Anne. That totally makes sense. And this one, for some reason, it seems odd. Okay. I don't know what other commissioners think. Otherwise, I think it's a great project.
I mean, I can't say I've seen some Italianate sister houses before, or that I have like an example in a historic district, but I feel like we see enough sister houses in historic districts, but the context is compatible to me. But I do agree that it's interesting that all the compatibility demonstrations were duplexes, and then what we're reviewing is sister houses, so it was a little unusual in that regard.
I do recall seeing Italianate sister houses and not mirrored. North of where I live, south of 5 Points, I don't know exactly. It's where I take walks, so I've gone past them. But they're more of a Second Empire kind of thing with mansard roofs, but they're sister houses and they're narrow. So I'm not disturbed by this. And given it's Potter Highlands, which has a lot of kind of variety, I don't think it's an issue.
Yeah, I would agree. I think those three duplexes got a lot of mileage today. Multiple projects we were looking at. And it sounded like through the R&O process that there were multiple iterations. Maybe this was, and now it's not. So I think it meets the guidelines per staff's report.
All right, sounds like we're all in agreement. Who wants to make a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion, Madam Chair. I move to approve application number 2023 COA 026 and 2022 COA 027 for phase one mass form and context at 2841 West 36th Avenue and 2845 West 36th Avenue as per design guidelines 4.1 through 4.6, 4.8, 4.15, 4.18, and 4.19 character defining features for Potter Highlands Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
I'll second that, and I think you said 2022 COA. That's what I heard anyway.
So do you want to make a friendly?
I want to make a friendly amendment that both of these are 2023 projects.
I accept.
Right. So thank you, Larry, for the motion, and Carrie for the seconding and the friendly amendment. There's no further discussion on the motion. Call for vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? All right, motion passes unanimously. So project is approved. All right, that's our last design review project today, but we do have a couple of discussion items. Do we?
Oh, yeah, there's 5 sessions. I'm so happy when I'm not staffing the commission anymore because it won't be seamless. So you can see the process up on your screen for discussion items. I'll go ahead and introduce the item, and staff will provide information. There are no public comments on discussion items, so we'll just discuss, and there's also no motion. So it's just really a discussion, exactly how it's stated. Exactly. So the first discussion item is the 2022 landmark year in review. Yeah. All right, I'm going to do the presentation from here. Let me turn my screen on so people can see me. All right, so every year I like to do a landmark year in review, summarizing all of the work the landmark has done, quite a bit. So we ended 2022 with 58 historic districts, which was no change from the previous year. However, we had 2 in 2021, so that makes a lot of sense that we wouldn't necessarily have a historic district last year. We added 4 individual landmarks to bring us up to 357. So that's the Hartman Courthouse, the Robinson House, Cadillac Loft, and the Livestock Exchange Building. Well reviewed other designations, one of which is still in the works, that is still in process for City Council. That will, if approved, will council next towards this year. In terms of planning and regulatory projects, we completed a few things last year, and we had a few things that were still in progress from last year into this year. So last year we completed the Historias, and I apologize, but I'm not a Spanish speaker, so probably mangled that, but the Mexican-American Latino Chicano Historic Contest. That was a very large 18-month effort that was completed last winter, so early last year, with a community meeting and a film screening and a panel discussion that was really very wonderful and very well done. We also worked on the landmark design guideline update that you all approved in November. So that was completed last year. The West Area Plan is still underway and has not gone to City Council yet, but the landmark involvement in that has ended. So we wanted to say that we are done with that from our side. In terms of things in progress, phases 4 and 5 of the Discover Denver citywide architectural survey are underway. So phase 4 is almost done. There's only a few hundred properties left, but the weather has slowed them down more than they would have expected. So that they're finishing up in Westwood, and are starting in Skyland, which is the start of phase 5. And that will go Skyland and I think Clayton, Whittier, and 5 Points in that order. It may be Skyland, Whittier, Clayton, 5 Points, but I think I've got it right that Clayton is the second neighborhood for that group. And then they will move to the west side. So let's see, Middle Park, Barnum West, and Akmar Park, I believe, are the neighborhoods that they're doing in the rest of phase 5. So there's 2 sections of phase 5. We're also working on the near northwest area plan and the near southeast area plan with our colleagues in planning services. So the landmark staff are part of those. We are subject matter experts for those plans to help infuse preservation into the plan efforts. And then we behind the scenes have been working on an inclusivity of existing designation project. So we've been looking at our existing individual landmarks and working with consultants to understand what stories are missing from those designations. So a lot of our earlier designations were designated for a specific architectural style or maybe some very older history, buildings like West High School. So designated for its architectural style and its importance as it works on high school, but it totally misses the Chicano movement and its importance to the Chicano movement. So, and it's largely because it was designated only a few years after the Chicano movement really took place. And so it was recent history as opposed to older history. Now it is older history. So our goal is to one of these days be able to tell the full story of all of these buildings that are landmarks.
Can I ask a question on that?
Of course.
So, since typically designations come from outside of the landmark, how is that working?
It's not a designation.
Well, it's already designated, right? So it's updating the current.
We're still working on what that will look like.
Okay. Because I guess I was just wondering, I thought those alterations to designations were brought about by the public and not the city. And so that's what I was curious about, is how,
it's more
like started, right?
It's a research project at the moment. Yeah, to understand what are our landmarks designated for, and is that telling the story of what all the landmarks should be designated for? For example, there was another one that I think it's has to do with Jane Silverstein Reese, but it doesn't actually, who is a female landscape architect, and it doesn't actually talk much about her. Let's fix that. So we're still working on what that would look like to update those stories, but we want even if it's just sharing the stories on the website or updating period of significance or something like that.
Quick question, have, areas that are sort of underrepresented, that are under the most serious threat of the kind of development that would destroy integrity, have neighborhoods or areas been identified, or just in terms of not specific locations, but more of the cultures that are under threat?
So, good question. So the Nuestra Historias Historic Context was about the Mexican-American Latino Chicano communities in Denver. There were places that were identified. One of those is La Raza Park, which is a site that is will be coming to you all for designation, which is great. So there are potential designations that may come out of this, but largely it is to document the story of a group of people or peoples and to identify places that were important to these communities so that the communities can come forward if they so choose. In terms of Discover Denver, that's really the purpose of to go neighborhood by neighborhood and to identify important buildings in those the neighborhoods to figure out, you know, what is a rare feature in a neighborhood? What is a unique building? What is a cool story that no one really knew much about that happened 50 years ago or 80 years ago and has been forgotten to time? So trying to document those stories. So we're doing a bunch of things, but somewhat separately. And also through these area plans that we're working on with the Neighborhood Planning Initiative, there are historic contexts for each neighborhood that identify important places in those neighborhoods as well. So. I'm going to dive into design review stuff, which is a big part of what we do as well. As you all know, you all work on these projects as well. So we had 220 quick reviews, almost 1,200 administrative reviews, just under 300 commission reviews for a total of 1,699. So one short of 1,700. I like to have a chart to show over the years how these have changed. Our quicks have gone down over the years, and it's really because of hailstorms. We have not had the number of re-roofing projects in historic districts the way we had in 2016, 17, 18. So you can kind of see we have a baseline-ish of between 200 and 300 projects a year that are quick. We also have a baseline of about 330 and 200 and 170 projects that go to the commission at any given time per year, and a lot of administrative reviews. So our administrative reviews were a little fewer last year than they were the previous year, but they were still a substantial number, and they were rather complex projects.
I mean, not every administrative review takes the same amount of time.
Correct.
Is the amount of time dedicated to all administrative reviews going up, despite the fact that they gone down a little?
Yeah, I believe so. I need to do a better, do more math on that, but.
I guess I'd hate to see a slight reduction from 21 to 2022 result in not getting the staff you need.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we've reviewed a ton of info. Yes. So that's actually a slide in here. So hold on a second. So we previously were asked last year, I'm going to go back to this one, why our quick review numbers are going down so substantially. And as they said, it's largely because of hailstorms. These are re-roofing has gone down quite a bit. And you can see that the rest of them are fairly flat. What we're doing in 2023 is we're going to hire a staff planner who is our lowest level of planner, just right out of school, undergrad even, who will be doing most of our quicks, and we're going to up what we do for quicks. So I think I mentioned this in the retreat. Yeah. Okay, cool. I won't repeat myself. So this number is going to go up a lot this year, which is great.
When you say you're going to up and I'm sorry if you brought this up in the retreat, I can't remember. When you're going to up the amount of what you do for quicks, what is being added that you have currently?
Solar panels.
Oh, that's.
Yeah, solar panels, retaining walls, some simple site work, some of the, like structural repairs, like field piers, stuff like that, that are fairly simple reviews on our part that someone else needs to review them to make sure that they, meet zoning and electrical requirements and structural requirements. But for us, it's like, check the box, done, out the door, so. Design review projects over 5 years is a lot of stuff on here, so I'm gonna, take out the two big ones, which are log and zone reviews. Those are building permits and zoning permits. And then revisions, which are, fairly steady, which is good. Those are things that have been revised after we already issued the certificate of appropriateness. So I'm gonna take those out and blow this up a little bit so that you can see better. It's just still not that clear. It's still a lot of stuff. But the ones I've underlined are all the things where our project numbers are going up. So either additions, alterations to historic buildings, concept or site development plans. Those are new buildings, multifamily buildings, or commercial buildings. Infill is also on here, phases 1 or 2. So that's gone up substantially over the last 3 years. Site work, which doesn't include fences, has gone up, but it's a little bit on the stable side. Solar has gone way up, which is great. We also have a lot more tax credits and zone lot amendments, which are associated with usually infill or site development plans. So you can see the complexity of the work that we're doing is going up. Here's the fun breakdown of the work that you guys do. So you all reviewed, sorry, I'm to hide this because I can see myself over the numbers. The total number of projects you all reviewed last year was 235. You had 27 meetings, so you had 3 special meetings. Brad Gassman stepped down after his first term, and Larry joined us. So there's changes there. I like to do this comparison of what staff recommendation is with commission decision, and it's not to see whether you all are following our recommendations. It's entirely to see whether we are anticipating what you all think, how you all are interpreting the guidelines. This is entirely so that we can see if we are being fairly true to what you all recommend, so that we can give our applicants the best guidance. And WPH, public hearing, sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry. It ended up being really long, and I was like, PH, I'll explain that, and I forgot. So yeah, so public hearing, you approved 2, you approved some, you had conditional for some, you denied one of them, just demolition or destination. You continued a few more. I mean, we usually don't recommend continuation, so that's, right. But the consent agenda was fairly consistent. You might have had 1 or 2 that you rolled off, but I think not. Anyway, LBDRC, they reviewed far fewer, 24 projects. It's a small, wow. Yeah. Again, we're fairly consistent with our recommendations as to how we are reading what the commission is going to say. So it's refreshing to see for us. If the numbers were like way off, we would have a problem. One of the other big things we do is demolition reviews. So demolition and certificate of demolition eligibility. We saw 12 of them in historic districts. Most of those were non-contributing buildings or maybe a garage or 2. And most of these, the ones that are non-contributing go to you all. The ones that are not, that are just garages, do not go to you all typically. My other computer started. Certificate of demolition eligibilities, we had 114. It's a little lower than previously, but not substantially. And then total of 680 CDE and demolition applications. So here's 5 years. Last year, we just had a ton of design review and a ton of demolitions, and this year's leveled off and is more comparable to previous years, which is good. So the green is properties that were approved by landmark staff within 10 business days. This is not including the ones in historic districts, just FYI. So the numbers are a little smaller than you were seeing, but we approved 8.2, what is it, 9.2%, 8.2%, I can't do that. 8.2%, 80, I really can't do that. 88.2%, does that sound right? Or am I still off? Anyway, almost 90%, almost 90%. I don't know, whatever. 1.8%, we did not approve right away. We posted notice of. I need it now.
97.2.
Thank you, Kelly.
Wait, or 98.2.
98.2.
See, at first I was like, which one are you calculating? And I was like, oh, it's gotta be this.
Yeah, so anyway, we, 98.2%, thank you all for doing the math for me. I'm super embarrassed now. Were approved within 10 business days, did not have potential to be a landmark. 1.8% did have potential to be landmark, that was only 10 properties. We received 2 designation applications for properties through this process, one of which was city council, one of which you all denied because you didn't find it was sufficient for a designation application.
To confirm, so CNHS is Certificate of Non-Historic Status,
Yes.
right? So that's what they used to be.
They used to be called that. So and I'm moving my slide in the middle of between 2019 and 2020. So in November of 2019, we changed the name of it through an ordinance update. We also changed the designation criteria. And what this tells us is that before that period, it was a little bit easier than it is now. It's much harder now to be an individual landmark because we are finding that fewer properties that come in have potential to be landmarks than they did in 2018 and 2019. And that is an unfortunate byproduct of this process. We were not anticipating that. In terms of good news, since demolition is always hard to talk about, let's talk about tax credits. You all approved and certified almost $250,000 of tax credits last year, which is off the charts. So that was almost $1.2 million in total rehab project costs that went back to historic buildings and to the contractors and trickled into the economy, which is fantastic. So we have been fairly steady for the last 3 years, or previous 3 years, and then last year it was just off the charts. So way to go, applicants who are doing a lot of great work on their historic buildings and also getting rewarded.
That's what I keep thinking, yeah. That's like a result of, I mean, what do you think that's a result of? COVID.
I wish we were gonna have. But we're also, we did a lot more advertising in the program. So we advertised it in newsletters. We tried to get the word out in public presentations about this process because it is money that is available. And if you follow the regulations, which not everyone does, I'd say probably half or maybe a little less than half of our applicants don't follow the regulations and therefore don't qualify for tax credits. But those who do get this wonderful reward. So, most of the ones who didn't qualify applied after they'd already done the work, and that's the challenge. So, we get grants. So we apply for grants and have gotten some project funding for 2022 and 2023. So last year and continuing into this year, we received several grants for the American Indian and Indigenous Peoples Historic Context, which Abby is going to talk about, and Becca is also going to talk about that as soon as I'm done, which is very soon. So we received grants from the National Park Service, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and the Rose Community Foundation. We also, as Community Planning and Development, put money into this project as well. And Denver Mountain Parks was generous and gave us some money as well there. For our inclusivity and designation project, the research project we're doing, we put our own money and we didn't get grants for that. But Discover Denver is heavily funded by the State Historical Fund, and so I wanted to acknowledge that as well. The cash match comes from Community Planning and Development Landmark Fund. So the tax credit fees go to help pay Discover Denver. We gave a whole lot of community presentations. I'm not going to go into detail. We like to do presentations whenever possible, so we gave a bunch of these. We also presented at a bunch of conferences. So the Colorado Preservation Conference, the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, which happens every other year. So we have several staff that gave presentations there. Abby gives presentations at a bunch of different places, so her name's on here a lot. So she gave a webinar with Melanie Short, who now works at Dottie. and also at the Michigan Preservation Conference. And then Kara and Becca and I and Abby gave lectures at University of Colorado, and then Jesse gave a presentation at Grand Valley State, Michigan, at the University of Michigan.
Were those presentations at the School of Architecture were they separate from the classes, or they were for?
They were for the classes we were giving, yeah, and Abby co-teaches the class, so, yeah. And then a few of us are involved with some professional organizations. So Abby's the vice chair of the National Alliance of Preservation Commission. Crystal's a member of the Public Arts Committee. I'm a member of on the board of the Rocky Mountain chapter of the Association for Preservation Technology. Some of the things that we did administratively that are behind the scenes things that most people don't know about are a restructuring of the planning services, and part of that is Landmark. So I mentioned this at a retreat Brittany mentioned this at a retreat last week, that instead of me being the manager and supervisor for pretty much everyone, we now are going to have two supervisors. One is the design review supervisor, and one is the planning and regulatory supervisor, as well as principal, senior, associate planners, and a permit review technician as well on the design review side. So we're hiring for the design review supervisor now. The planning and regulatory supervisor, Kara, she was promoted into that. And we just had a promotion. We were able to use Lydia's former position to create a principal planner for planning and regulatory, and Abby was just promoted. That starts next week as our principal planner for planning and regulatory. We're going to take her former senior city planner position and transfer that to a principal planner for design review, and that'll be internal, and whoever does that, we will transition their position to a staff planner. There are a lot of moving parts in this. Yeah. These are the things that I think about at 2 a.m. I'm like, oh, what if we did this? And so it's so delightful to actually have this stuff happening. So that's why I have such bags on. The other things we're working on are a designation customer guide. Becca's been working on it for a long time and is doing a great job with it, and it's very close. So we hope to have that to you all. Brittany's been working on application checklists so that our application materials are consistent with development services, and Jesse's working on a neglected derelict building one. We have been doing a file cleanup. Our files are just overflowing. And so we've been giving things over to the Western History Collection. So they just got a big load of stuff in December, I think it was. And about half of the stuff, we have the other half to keep going through and getting that.
These digital files or physical files?
Physical files, yeah. Yeah, we have a retention policy, and that we keep things for 5 years, but we generally keep things for about 7, just to make sure that because some projects take a long time to actually get built. So those matches, limitations. There you go. So hiring, we did a lot of hiring last year. So Matt Huda, who maybe you all met last week, he was hired as our landmark and zoning inspector last year, January. And if you go down to the very bottom, almost the bottom, he was promoted to associate city planner, and started in January. So we like to hire from within, which is great. Becca was moved from a limited term to a permanent senior city planner. We hired Karen and Lydia, who were briefly with us last spring and summer. Bridget joined us. You met her last week, or you may have met her before, but she joined us from the residential planner review team as an associate city planner. Emma Sensky, who we met last week, she is our permit review technician, and she joined us in the fall. She's doing a lot of her intake and then some other projects as well for us. Kara was promoted, as I mentioned, and then Kathy Corbett. We hired Kathy as a part-time senior city planner at the end of last year. She started with us last month.
So I guess she's not coming back.
She's not coming back to the commission. She can't. Yeah, her trip.
Oh, you can't re-up after time.
We don't believe so. All right, what's on tap? So the exciting stuff we're doing this year, we're going to finish implementing the organizational structure. Then we've got Abby and Becca to talk about this American Indian and Indigenous Peoples Historic Complex, which is really exciting. We're hoping to complete the inclusivity in our designations project. we're gonna start phase 2 of the design guidelines. It probably lead into 2024. And then we've got some interesting designations on deck, and we're hoping to expand our outreach and engagement efforts. So that's it. We didn't do much.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted. We're not, we're just spring chickens over here. Just kidding. I know, you guys seem pretty chipper to me.
You gotta talk to that coffee guy downstairs, he's putting something there.
I'll try to find things. Do you want to bring up just a pretty picture to look at? We don't have any slides.
Let's just look at you.
Yeah, hi, everyone. In case there's anyone on the line still, we're going to move on to our second discussion item. Assuming there's other questions on that. Which is the American Indian Indigenous Peoples District. So, thanks, everyone. And Jen actually did a really good job teeing us up for this. So we are kicking off our next historic context in the series of Denver in Context, of our historic context series. We're really proud of that one. With a vanity URL and everything. Great. But we will be kicking off our next historic context, and we'll focus on the American Indian Indigenous peoples that have called Denver home since before it was Denver, time immemorial. And really, this is an exciting project that we're super thrilled about. After the success of the Latino Chicano historic context, we have a lot of momentum. And Jenny Buddenborg, who just left our team, teed us up for a successful second project and helped apply for funding the National Park Service and the National Trust for Historic Preservation. So this next project, I think we're going to try and build on the success of the Latino Chicano historic context, but we're really going to focus on community engagement and working with the community to help them tell their stories through the context. Historic context is usually a pretty dry document that's a few hundred pages long that lays out a broad pattern of history and then identifies sites and places that may be significant. And we feel that that model is maybe not right for these communities, and that we really want to make it engaging and storytelling and working with the community. And most importantly, we want to start and form a relationship with Denver's Native communities. Traditionally, historic preservation, especially here, has not been great about inviting other people to the table. So more than anything, we're excited to get this document and have it for future reference to help future designations, help other people understand the history of the area. But really, we want to use it as a jumping off point to form a relationship with Denver's Native communities and learn what's important to them. We also think it's really going to push the boundaries of what do we think is significant. Our 10 criteria, so there are a lot of them, that are really based on physical buildings and sites. And, we have a harder time thinking about landscapes or natural resources as being culturally and historically significant. So I think as we move through this process, we're going to really be pushing the boundaries of how we talk about preservation in Denver and what can we preserve and how do we preserve it. What the design guidelines are great for buildings. Are they as good for natural resources if someone wanted to designate that, something like that? So I think we're both really excited about the project and what it's doing for Denver. Abby's going to talk about all the technical stuff now. I get to do the feel good. It's great.
So just to update you on kind of where we're at with this project. So timeline-wise, we're about to have our kickoff. So the kickoff will be February 25th. We're having an event at the Denver Indian Center, getting catering to Kave, which we're really excited about and stuff. So we encourage anyone's able to come. It'll be from 11 to 1. So staff has really been working on this since last summer, kind of pulling everything together, working a lot on the engagement, trying to start connections in the community, putting together some additional funding. So as Jen mentioned, we have funding from the National Park Service and National Trust for Historic Preservation, CPB, and Mountain Park. And those are all funding the actual context study. So with a study that we'll hire, and we're going to be hiring a consultant to do that. RFP is out, we've been reviewing it, committee, and we're really hoping to have a decision on that soon. And thanks to Julie, who is on our RFP committee, so thank you. And then, but we're looking at some additional funding as well. And so we applied for a grant from the Rose Community Foundation, and they very kindly provided us funding to help with our engagement. And so they are providing the funding for us to be able to have a big event at the Denver Indian Center, and to be able to get catering from the Cave and stuff. And they're also paying for us, providing funding so that we can have a booth at the Denver Powwow in March this year. So that will also have a presence there. It doesn't, so I guess it doesn't matter if it's there. You need it's a classic sort of
Is it a touchscreen? No, you have.
It's only, yeah, that was making a lot of
We don't think one of those in our comments from last year.
Yeah, and then we've also been looking for additional funding. Again, for that kind of community engagement piece, we applied for a certified local government grant. We're still waiting to hear on that. We will hopefully, hear about that grant at the end of the month. So that grant would fund community involvement in two ways. We plan to have community connectors as part of this project. It was something that was started in the first contact, but it was a volunteer position. So people volunteering from the community and basically like helping us to link with people that, yes, you should interview this person, or do you know this person? So some people volunteered from the community to kind of help us make those connections. So this time we want to make it a more formal position, and we want to be able to have compensation. So to make sure that we're adequately compensating the community that are spending their time on the project. So we applied for CLG grant funding to be able to provide compensation for community connectors that help us with the project. I then have also been working on, in addition to doing outreach with the American Indian and Indigenous Peoples community in Denver, which represent people from all over the U.S. who have moved there, a lot of them coming initially during urban relocation, the mid-20th century. We also want to talk to the tribes who were here historically and still feel an historic connection to Denver. So I've been doing tribal outreach to some of those groups to see which tribes would be interested in really being engaged and in this part of this project. So we identified, Cheyenne and Arapaho of Oklahoma, Crow Creek Sioux, Southern Ute, Kiowa of Oklahoma, Northern Arapaho, Shoshone Bannock, Ute of Utah, Northern Cheyenne, and Cheyenne River Sioux have all said that they would like to come to Denver to do tribal outreach. So we are planning an event for late summer to bring representatives of the tribes to Denver and be able to have a weekend where we really talk with them, see, what Denver means to them, how would they like to be recognized in the city, what their connections are, what places are significant to them. And so part of the CLG grant would also be covering their travel expenses and their hotel and food for them to be able to come to Denver for the weekend to be part of the Context project. So timing-wise, we're really looking that a lot of this year is going to be spent with that engagement and collecting research, kind of starting to put together the themes for the context and start to visualize it. Hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be at the point of maybe having a sample chapter done or starting to work on that. And then we envision, we'll be kind of really working on putting together the context probably the first half of next year. So we want to have plenty of time for community review and get input and all of that. So hopefully by middle of next year, we'll be ready to release. And we are also working in partnership with the Office of Storytelling, and they are working on a documentary film as well, which was also part of the first project that Carrie, and it's awesome. Yes, we love the Office of Storytelling. So we'll be working with them. So same thing, this time we'll be releasing the context along with also releasing a documentary film.
We also have 2 intern positions that will be helping us with some of this research. So a really exciting opportunity for either high school or college students. Hopefully help them get interested in history and, maybe we'll get 2 city planners out of it.
Yeah, I mean, love, you have any questions, we'd also, if there's any way you'd like to be involved, if you have any recommendations for people that you think we would be sure to talk to, we'll also be having kind of somewhat informal but advisory group that we work with throughout the project as well. And if you think of anything going forward, so Beck and I are the ones that, contact if you have any suggestions or thoughts or want to get involved.
We'd be happy to send out a flyer for the kickoff, all of you, so that you have some time.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Questions about others?
Yeah.
A lot going on.
Wow. Where's the Office of Storytelling?
They're with the Human Rights Community Partnership.
Okay.
So they're up on the 7th floor.
Okay.
And they're like a 4-woman show, and they just do fantastic work. If you ever just want to spend a few hours on their website watching little shorts and ask them all these different Denver stories.
So it's city department.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those like amazing time sucks where you start watching, you're like, oh, another. But it time well spent, we should.
Is there a connection between those kind of activities and the effort to have a museum of Denver, which is in its infancy? Have you heard about it? There's one of the council persons and someone from History Colorado have approached Historic Denver about every little community has their own little history museum, but not Denver. And it sounds like, that effort is like 2 meetings into it. But it sounds like the content that's already being developed by, your agency and the storytellers is all stuff that can contribute to whatever this history museum might be.
That's exciting.
So there might be people reaching out. But I'm not sure everybody knows what everybody else is doing already in some of this.
Great. All right. Well, that's the end of the agenda, right?
That's it.
Then it's 3:23, and I'll go ahead and close the meeting. Thanks, everybody.